A Plaguelands Media production.
Hey everyone, this is Hugh from Plaguelands Media, and I have some really fucking bad news for you. We have come to the end of our Death and Return of Superman Omnibus journey. This is the last part of this epic Superman storyline. So those of you that have stuck with me through parts 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, now you get to see how the whole fucking story ends, and I thank you sincerely for that. Without any preamble, let's just get straight into the next episode of... So Superman is back. Let's see if he is going to be victorious. Granted, this story came out in the early 90s, so I'm pretty sure yes is the answer there. But, you know, we'll just see. So we have Steel, Lois, Superboy, and Lex Luthor / Dr. Zaius. And they are questioning whether he is the real Superman. Superman himself, of course, is trying their best to convince him. We have Supergirl there as well. Lois doesn't know kind of what is going on. Steel confronts him, but he remembers who Steel was. So Steel now is a believer. At the same time, we have Cyborg, Superman, and Mongol in Engine City. You might remember that was Coast City before they destroyed it, the home of Hal Jordan, the greatest of the Green Lanterns. Mongol is being a little bit of a dick, and Cyborg Superman is like, just remember who is the fucking boss around here. At this point, these two aliens are talking, and one of them kind of says that he knows exactly who Cyborg Superman is and where he came from. And then we get exposition on Cyborg Superman's backstory. We find out that he was an astronaut known as Hank Henshaw. His wife was killed in an accident when they were in space. Superman failed to save him, and his essence somehow ended up on Mongol's war world, where he kind of tricked Mongol into basically recreating him. His essence goes into the computers. He can kind of recreate himself, and hence he becomes Cyborg Superman, and Mongol is in his thrall. His whole purpose is revenge against Superman. He feels that Superman should have done more to save him and to save his wife. So, Steel, Superboy, Lex Luthor, Supergirl, Superman, Lois Lane, they're all like, we've got to go to Coast City and sort this shit out. Lois Lane is still skeptical until Superman, with his lovely new 90s mullet, gives her a bit of a fucking tonguey. And she's like, oh, I remember that tongue. Hells yeah, you're the real Superman. And they all decide to go off and kind of try and stop whatever nefarious plan Cyborg Superman and Mongol have going. And we get the Superman Revenge Squad assault on Engine City. So the three of them fly to Engine City. Superboy is kind of remembering his conversation with Tanner. They get to Engine City, where Mongol and Cyborg Superman kind of realize what is going on, and it becomes just a giant shit fight. Now, I will tell you this now, a majority of the next few issues is just one big giant shit fight. It's fantastic, don't get me wrong, action-packed, dynamic, but, you know, just to keep you on your toes here. So they beat the crap out of the weapon systems, aliens, automated robots, and Superman, realizing that he's still not at full strength, is like, fuck this, I'm going full Predator here. Gets the 2 guns, some ammo, he's in his black suit, and he's like, let's get this fucking party started, bitches. At this point, the news is kind of reporting on what is going on. You can see here the cultist for Cyborg Superman, Rex Leach there, still going on about the copyright and all that kind of crap. And Cyborg Superman and Mongol launch a missile towards Metropolis. Superboy, who we know from previous issues, is vulnerable to fire. So, you know, in an attempt at heroics, now that the real Superman's back, Steel and Superman decide we'll stay here and hold things off. And Superboy's like, I'll get the missile. You know, just leave it to me. They don't realize what he's actually doing at the time. But he does go and grab onto the missile and try to use his powers to stop it. At this point, Steel and Superman go into the depths of Engine City, and Superman is like, I'm just going to jump off here, even though I can't fly properly yet. You'll catch me, Steel, because you're a good dude. Superboy, still trying to guide the missile, or stop the missile, I should say. Everyone in Metropolis is shitting their pants. Superboy is doing his best to stop it, and ultimately he manages to divert it away before it hits the Daily Planet. However, it explodes above Metropolis, and knowing that Superboy is vulnerable to fire, this is not a good way to end his storyline. Steel and Superman go down into the depths of Engine City. They find more weird aliens that are, minions of Mongol, and they kind of fight their way through, doing their best. Steel, of course, with his hammer, Superman with weakened powers. We get a shot of the final moments of Superboy before the missile explodes over Metropolis Harbor, or Metropolis Bay. Superboy didn't die. He, in fact, falls to the ground severely injured. Lex Luthor goes to him, and Superboy is like, I'm needed back in Coast City, but he just cannot do it. He's got no energy left. The fire, the missile, everything took it out of him. Cyborg Superman flipping his shit because his plan didn't work. And they ultimately decide that their role is to destroy the Earth, basically, because the plan all along was to build an engine in Coast City and an engine in Metropolis that would propel Earth as the new war world through space, but with only one engine, that being the Coast City engine, the Earth is just going to kind of spin out of control and end up being destroyed. Cyborg Superman has no fucking problem with that. Mongol is like, come on, you motherfucker. You promised me War World. You know, that's what I should get. At this point, Eradicator wakes up, kind of realizes what is going on, and decides that he is going to head off and help Superman and Steel. Eradicator, of course, being a reformed villain, which I think is pretty cool. And you know his story arc from the earlier parts of this series. Steel and Superman still fighting, and we discover that Supergirl has snuck in with them. She was invisible the whole time. So Superman had basically gotten Supergirl to sneak in, and Supergirl had been helping them in secret, you know, the more the merrier, so to speak. And they're just like, you know what, fuck this, we're going to end this shit, let's go. They bust in. Cyborg Superman has basically turned against Mongol. Mongol is kind of pissed off, knowing that that would happen, because, you know, when villains team up, one inevitably turns on the other. And it is revealed that Cyborg Superman has planted a kryptonite bomb in the heart of Engine City. If it explodes, it does not bode well for the Man of Steel. There we have a great splash page of Steel and Superman with a fucking gun. So make of that what you will, 90s comic book fans. And so they're kind of just busting in. You can see that these issues are really quite shallow in their storytelling, and yet so much fun in their ability to convey the intense action of Superman, Steel, Superboy, Supergirl busting into Engine City to stop the villains. So, I mean, by today's standards, I don't know. These are like action-oriented comics, which are really well worth the ending to a story such as the death and return of Superman. They confront Mongol, get into a huge fight. Mongol, of course, grabs Superman, and at this point, Lois decides, you know what, I should really call Jonathan and Martha Kent and just let them know their fucking kid's alive. Which she does. Cyborg Superman becoming part of Engine City there, and Steel going in to stop the reactor. Cyborg Superman using his abilities to attack him via the computers. The fight is incredibly brutal, with Cyborg Superman getting the upper hand. Steel possibly doing the Terminator 2 thing here to take him out. But of course, it doesn't really work. Now, we get the first image of Hal Jordan, Green Lantern. Why is this important? It's important because Coast City was destroyed. Coast City is Hal Jordan's home. But this fucking irks me a little bit, and I'll explain why as I continue on with the story. So, Superman and Mongol continue to fight. Supergirl, invisible, comes in and joins the battle. Mongol kind of realizes what is going on and makes sure she's visible. Another smack, very reminiscent of Superman's battle with Doomsday, although to a more lesser extent. At this point, we have like the Eradicator coming in. Cyborg Superman is fighting Steel again. It's just a fucking smackdown at this point, which is really cool, really intense. And Steel manages to kind of get away. Cyborg Superman not happy with it. And we see Cyborg Superman in a rage and Mongol with the battered form of Superman. And this moves us into the first and only issue of Green Lantern to be part of this story. Now, I find it very... what is the word I'm looking for? Not confusing, baffling, I guess, that they decided to destroy Coast City, the home of Hal Jordan Green Lantern. And I believe this was done because the Hal Jordan story arc that follows this story is where he actually turns into the villain Parallax. And I believe that was the next big story arc that DC were kind of going for. However, at this point, it just doesn't kind of work, if that makes any sense. So, Green Lantern. Superman is being held by Mongol. Mongol is about to win. Green Lantern comes flying in. This iteration of Hal Jordan, I like. I prefer the New 52 version, which I know is a very controversial thing to say. But the New 52 version of Hal Jordan is a little younger. He becomes head of the Green Lanterns, ultimately gets exiled and hunted down. And it's just a really cool story arc for the character. The New 52 Green Lantern series starts off with an amazing run where Hal Jordan has to team up with Sinestro. Now, for those of you that don't know, and I'm going off on a fucking tangent here, and I apologize for that because I know people have commented on it in the past, but whatever. Hal Jordan was trained by Sinestro. Sinestro was a Green Lantern who ultimately was banished from the Green Lantern Corps, and Sinestro created the Yellow Lantern Corps. In early days, Green Lanterns couldn't affect anything that was yellow, which is really fucking weird, but whatever. But Sinestro's Yellow Lantern Corps works on fear. And in the beginning of the New 52 run of Green Lantern, Sinestro, Hal Jordan was in a really bad place, and Sinestro came and basically teamed up with Hal Jordan. It was a really good run, really worth checking out. So anyway, that's got nothing to do with this. Hal Jordan comes to Coast City and fights his way inside, as the Green Lantern is wont to do. For those of you that don't know what the Green Lantern's power is, he has a power ring made by the Green Lantern Corps on Oa, and it works on willpower, and he can basically create anything that he wants. He uses his will to do it. When I was growing up, the Green Lantern was just fucking stupid to me. I thought it was really dumb. Now that I've read a lot of the Green Lantern comics, it's a really cool idea. Especially after the Blackest Night storyline, where you got the different the color spectrums. So there's like the Black Lanterns, Green Lanterns, Yellow Lanterns, Red Lanterns, Orange Lanterns, so on and so on. The idea that you get powered up by emotion is pretty interesting. Let me just bring that down a little bit. It's pretty interesting to me, and I really enjoy the Green Lantern books. Now, you know what? Even though it was shit, I will admit that it was a shit movie, but I did enjoy the Green Lantern film with Ryan Reynolds. I'm sorry, everybody. Please don't kill me. Okay, Green Lantern comes in, saves the day, takes Mongol out. Look at that. Smashes him right in the fucking back. So, you know, the fight is going on. Everyone is trying to work out what is going on in Coast City, especially Hal Jordan's ex-girlfriend, who runs the flight company that Hal Jordan used to work with. Can't even remember the name of it. Doesn't really matter. So Hal Jordan basically smashes the shit out of Mongol. realizes that Superman is in trouble. Mongol fights back. The fight continues. Hal Jordan, he's got broken bones. He's outmatched, but he still continues to fight because that's who Hal Jordan is. And he creates a suit of armor for himself and just smacks the shit out of Mongol for destroying Coast City. At this point, Superman gets the strength to kind of recover. He smashes the crap out of Cyborg Superman, defeating him. And Superman and Green Lantern kind of leave, and then Hal Jordan meets up with his ex-girlfriend, who tells him this is where you've got to go next because this is where your next adventure is. Okay. Here's the problem I fucking have with this. It's the death and return of Superman. You've established the villains of the piece as Cyborg, Superman, and Mongol after Doomsday has effectively been defeated. They destroyed Coast City, which is the home of the Green Lanterns, and your way to solve this is to have the villains defeated in a Green Lantern comic book, not a Superman comic book. Now, I know as a comic collector from back in the day, there were titles that I didn't buy. Okay? If I was collecting X-Men, X-Factor, X-Force, I didn't buy Thor. A crossover comic like this, on such a huge fucking scale as the death and return of fucking Superman, and you have the major villains of the end of this story defeated in another hero's comic book. No. That is not how you do it. That is money grabbing at its fucking worst. It was a great issue. Don't get me wrong. I'm not faulting the writers. I'm not faulting the artist. I'm faulting DC Comics for that one. They dropped the fucking ball. It doesn't sit well with me. If you have a huge multi-piece Superman story, keep it to the Superman comics. You can have Green Lantern make a fucking guest appearance. Green Lantern dealing with the death of Coast City is an important story, and it moves on to Hal Jordan's story arc where he becomes Parallax and is a major villain in the DC universe. Okay, I get it. That's fine. Don't have the defeat of the major villains of a fucking Superman story in a Green Lantern comic book just because you wanted to fucking get the Green Lantern people on board with the destruction of Coast City and Hal Jordan's ultimate turn to the dark side, so to speak. Please don't sue me, Lucasfilm and Disney. Okay, sorry for the rant there. This was a great issue, though. Really enjoyed it. Okay, back for good. We have the Eradicator. A little bit of backstory over what just happened, just to see. Here's the thing. This is just filling in for people who didn't buy the fucking Green Lantern book. Why? You need to have the story contained in the hero's comic book. I know there were like 4 or 5 Superman comics going out. There's a ton of Batman comics. There's a ton of X-Men comics that all go out at the same time. You don't need to chuck in a Green Lantern, have the major battle in that issue, and then for those people that didn't buy it, you recap it in an issue of Superman? For fuck's sake, people. No, sir. I say no, sir, to that. Sorry. Getting a little ahead of myself here. So we get a bit of backstory. The villains aren't really down for the count. Cyborg Superman gets back up. He is attacking Superman. Superman is on his last legs here. Supergirl, Steel, trying to help. It's not doing any good. Superman goes full Arnold Schwarzenegger commando for some fucking reason, trying to take out Engine City's main reactor. Cyborg Superman is like, it's futile. He gets into Steel's armor and starts kind of, choking himself. A little bit of, autoerotic asphyxiation, I guess you could say. Superboy manages to smash the armor, thus freeing Superman. Eradicator comes to help them out. The battle is going kind of poorly. The kryptonite gas is released from the bomb. Eradicator, at this point, basically is like, I will stop this. Cyborg Superman is like, fuck no. The kryptonite bomb's going off with or without you. Steel, or John Henry Irons at this point, Superboy and Supergirl, like, we've got to get the fuck out of here. We've got to help Superman. What do we do? Eradicator goes in for the death blow, and they end up firing everything they have at Cyborg Superman. It is, however, ultimately futile. Cyborg Superman is that powerful. He fires a kryptonite laser at Superman. Eradicator takes the blast for him, thus saving Superman's life. His energy is dispersed. Cyborg Superman thinks he has won, but Green Lantern manages to save everyone and get them the fuck out of there. Superman at this point comes through and just is like, you know what? I'm done with this, punches him out and ultimately saves the day. Supergirl, Green Lantern, Superboy, and Superman now in his underpants, because that's what battle does to warriors. It destroys their clothing for some reason. Managed to kind of get out of there, and they all realize that that he is the real Superman. And then all of a sudden, Superman gets his clothes back. Don't ask me what the fuck happened there, because I'm as baffled as you are. But Superman's back. And he goes off on his merry way. Now, that is effectively the end of the reign of the Superman storyline, but we still have a couple of issues to cover, so I figured, why not just knock them out of the park now? So, Adventures of Superman. Lois is asleep on the couch. There's a tapping on a window, and she's like, if that's that fucking pigeon again, I'm going to ass fuck that fucking pigeon. Oh no, it's Superman. And Superman gives her a big smoochy smoochy. And then he flies her up, giving her smoochy smoochies. And there's a lot of smoochy smoochies. We have Clark Kent / Superman in the shower while Lois Lane is getting ready for work. And Lois basically says, did you call your mother and father? He says, yes, I did it while you were in the shower. Which is a little odd to me, because you would think they would shower together and get a little bit raunchy because they've been gone for so long. Now, at this point, there is a reference that hardly anyone would get. Superman comes out of the shower in a towel and says it must have been a dream. Okay, this is a reference to Dallas, where JR was shot and killed, and then they had a whole season of Dallas without JR, and then they brought JR back in the first episode of the next season by him coming out of the shower, and we realized that the entire previous season was a dream that JR's wife had, that he'd been killed. I don't know why this is in a Superman book, but I've got to say, I fucking laughed at this reference. I thought it was freaking hilarious. They have a pillow fight. Superman throws her on the bed. I'm sure in any other circumstance that would break her back, but you know, who am I to judge these things? And then they start to talk about, okay, Superman's back. How are we going to get Clark Kent back? You know, maybe he had amnesia. Maybe he was washed away. Maybe he was abducted by aliens. And then Clark is like, you know what? Can we put a fucking pin in this conversation? Because someone needs my help. And then he just flies off, as he usually does. We get the Eradicator and Steel getting back to Metropolis, to Star Labs. They kind of help him out. Supergirl and Superboy part on good terms with Steel. And then we have, what is this villain's name? Loophole? I think his name is Loophole. And they're breaking into a safe because all of the Supermen are at Coast City. Superman crashes the party. And Loophole is like, well, you know what? My technology means I can punch right through you. And Superman is like, well, you know what? Fuck you. I'm punching you into a wall and then I'm going to leave you there. Which he does. He leaves him stuck in a wall with literally his dick is stuck in the fucking wall. I don't even know what to make of this. At this point, Superman goes and sees Lex Luthor. Lex Luthor is a bit pissed off that Supergirl hasn't been around at this point. Tanner goes to see Superboy and basically tells him, I'm quitting the news and I'm leaving Metropolis. Superman is doing his thing. Jimmy Olsen comes up and Superman's like, Jimmy, oh, Jimmy, yay, wee. And at that point, he is confronted by none other than Bibbo Babowski. And he introduces Superman to Krypto, which is a reference, of course, to Superman's dog, Krypto, the super dog. There is a new film out about the League of Super Pets, which involves Superman's dog. Yes, Superman had a super dog. It's awesome. Get the fuck over it. He also had, there was also a super horse, a super monkey, and if you even want to get into it, Batman had a fucking bat cow at one point. So, whatever. Superman hears Krypto is kind of going crazy in the rubble, and Superman realizes there's someone trapped in there. And we get, oh my god, it's the fucking woman from way back at the beginning who didn't have soda for her son. Look at that. The story has come full circle. And then Superman and Lois realize, why don't we just say that Clark Kent was trapped under a building? Because some of the buildings in Metropolis had bomb shelters built underneath them during the war. And that's how this woman and her child could survive for so long. Is it that woman and the child? I don't know. Maybe the child's too big. Whatever. Who cares? Anyway, Lois is like, I'm a fucking reporter. Why the fuck didn't I think of that? I'll tell you why, Lois. Because you're getting a tonguey and super wrestling with him on the bed in the fucking shower. So that's why you didn't think of it. Okay. Now we go to Action Comics. And who is disguised as Clark Kent? So Superman breaks through the rubble and finds Clark Kent. Clark Kent has been alive, surviving in a bomb shelter, and Jimmy Olsen manages to get a picture of Clark, Superman, and Lois all together. But is it really Lois Lane? So we get a bit of a recap on the news. Superman does his thing. Guy Gardner's a little pissed off that he picked Eradicator because Eradicator wasn't the real Superman. Justice League has come back from their adventure in space. They were fucking useless. What was even the point? Lex Luthor still pissed off about everything. Superman gets checked out. And we see Eradicator. Or is that Cyborg Superman? No, that's Eradicator. That's Star Labs getting healed. Lois and Clark go to the apartment where Superman busts in. Is like, get your hands off my woman. But it's not really Clark. It's Supergirl, who has the ability to shapeshift. And so she changed into Clark Kent for the guys. She thanks them for what they were doing and all that kind of stuff. And now Lois and Clark and Superman are back together, but then they get a strange visitor, Dr. Occult, I believe his name is. Because Lois was wondering how Superman managed to come back to life. What was the reason Superman didn't actually die? So Dr. Occult takes them back into the past to basically explain how Superman is still alive. This is exposition at its fucking finest, but all through this, Superman is feeling everything that happened to him in the past. So when they go back to the fight with Doomsday, he feels the fight with Doomsday. So ultimately, what happened was he fought Doomsday. His spirit was really weak. There was a little shred of life left in him when they buried him. He did meet his father during the Born Again kind of storyline, but the Eradicator taking the body back to the fortress and putting him in the regeneration matrix healed him. But ultimately, Superman is mortal and he can die. It was just a fluke set of circumstances that allowed him to come back to life, which is a very comic book way to look at things. Dr. Occult sends them to Kansas, where they wake up outside of the Kent farm, and Superman and Lois are reunited with Jonathan and Martha, thus ending the death and return of Superman storyline. And then we get, at the end of the graphic novel, some fantastic covers. I don't know why Doomsday is eating Superman's cloak there. That's fucking weird. Then we have that. So, this was the epic event that shocked a nation and changed Superman forever. Well, I would say it did shock a nation. I don't think it changed Superman forever. But that is the death and return of Superman. I hope you enjoyed this series. It was certainly a lot of fun to reread, a lot of fun to talk about. I appreciate those of you that liked the video, that left comments. If you liked this video, if you like this series, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. I am going to do another, well, I've got a lot more of these comic book things lined up, but the next one, I'm going to give you a sneak preview right now of what is coming up. This was chosen by a good friend of mine, our Plaguelands Media partner in crime, Ian Van Gamet. I will be doing Batman No Man's Land Omnibus Volume 1. This was the Batman story that had Gotham City cut off after an earthquake. I've never read any of the comics. I have only ever read the novelization. So I'm looking forward to this one. It is about the same size as the Death and Return of Superman. So this will be the next comic book series that I review. Overall, what did I think of the Death and Return of Superman? I think this story, as a whole, cops a lot of shit where it shouldn't. Sure, it's slightly generic. A lot of the issues are just people fighting. But ultimately, I think it brought a lot of good things to the mythology of Superman. We got Doomsday, who is by no means done and dusted. He does come back. And in later issues of Superman, you get his origin story. We got some great characters in Steel, Cyborg Superman. We got to see a lesser used villain in Mongol. To be honest, I would have liked Brainiac thing, but they did that later in the New 52. We got to see how certain characters process grief, which might not seem important, but it really is, because a lot of people who read comic books, at least back in the day, dealt with, like, comic books dealt with very serious issues. And a lot of people poo-pooed comic books as being a lesser form of, dare I use the term, literature. And yet, you can still get an understanding of things like grief, happiness, loss, from stories like The Death and Return of Superman, watching Lois Lane's story arc, watching the story arc of the Kents, watching how Martha Kent had to deal with not only the loss of her son, but also the potential death of her husband. Incredibly realistic, in my opinion. Now, you might disagree with me, and that is fine. I would just like to say that I have dealt with a lot of these issues myself, and I thought they did it incredibly well. They didn't, what's the term? They didn't glamorize it in any way, shape, or form. So, while a lot of people kind of shit on this storyline as being the death of death in comics, I would disagree with that, because as I've said in the past, if you went into this thinking that Superman was going to stay dead, you're a fucking idiot. It wasn't the death of death in comics. It was the birth of realistic counseling, I guess you could say. Kids would read this book, and had they experienced a death in their family, they would know, oh, these feelings are valid, these emotions are valid. I think this handled death better than the Batman Death in the Family storyline where they killed off Jason Todd. Now, that is just my opinion, and you are free to disagree with me, which is, perfectly fine and fantastic. If you do disagree, please write in the comments below. It's an open forum. I'm just putting my thoughts out there. But we are now ending the Death and Return of Superman Omnibus. I would like to thank my good friend Luke Carmen for requesting me to review this storyline. It was a lot of fun. It took a while, 6 episodes of this, but there you go. That was fantastic. Please, everyone, stay safe. Have a great rest of your day. But most importantly, and I cannot stress this enough, read a fucking book, people.